All right, the Bucks. It is Talking Buccaneers with me, Fumane, ahead of a massive fixture, easily the biggest fixture in South Africa, with Kaizer Chiefs having become a trophyless mid-table side. We're facing a big test in this one. To say that Mamelodi Sundowns is a very good team would be a huge understatement. And in this video, I want to look at what they do, what makes them so good, and then talk about how we can beat them, because that's possible and that's why we love football, because the so-called big team can be beaten by the so-called underdog. And to be honest, you guys might be angry at me for calling Orlando Pirates the underdog, but if you're honest, if we're all honest, the log even tells us that, the log suggests that the point that Orlando Pirates comes into this one as the underdog, but more so even recent history tells you that, even people's expectations will tell you that. But before I get into that, I just want to thank you for watching, thank you for tuning in. If it's your first time, welcome. I'm on here at least 5 days a week. I try best I can to post on every day of the week, but obviously it's sometimes impossible. But I'm on here dropping content. Please do me a favor, by the way, and hit that subscribe button. Do it right now. I demand it. And thank you if you have. This is so you can get every bit of content that I put out in the future. Yeah, and also please do hit that like button, interact in the comment section. Firstly, I love to hear what you guys think with all of these things, because I learn a lot from you guys and everyone who's in the comment section. But yeah, it just also helps me, reach a wider audience, to grow the channel. As you all know, as you can see, this is a relatively small channel, but thank you for everyone who's subscribed, because we've definitely surpassed my expectations of what could be of this channel. It is a growing channel, and it is because of everyone who has subscribed. Thank you for that. If you haven't, please do subscribe so that we can grow even bigger than this. So let's get into the game. I'll get into more of the narrative stuff a bit later on the show. I want to start with, how Mamelodi Sundowns set up. So they set up in a 4-3-3, but, good coaches of old like to say that the formation really only tells you about how a team wants to set up, how a team wants to defend, I beg your pardon, how they want to organize themselves when the opposition has got the ball. What we know about Sundowns is that they dominate most of the ball, but there are those times when the opposition, and an opposition like Orlando Pirates, will have those moments where we are, putting them under pressure and we've got the ball and we're attacking them. So they like to set up in a 4-3-3, and the image you will see right now on your screen is what I predict will be the formation and the players that they'll put out tomorrow when we play. At the time of recording, it is the day before the 20th of September 2023, mentioning that for anyone who might watch this, later than on the day that I will post this video. But yeah, I predict they will start with this formation. It will be a 4-3-3, but a club like Mamelodi Sundowns that used, the total football principle. What is the total football principle? It's just this idea of old that, the great teams of old, like the Netherlands and Johan Cruyff's Barcelona, used to possess, where when they've got the ball, when they're in possession, you'll see players rotating positions, and, you'll see a left back popping up at central midfielder, you'll see a left wing popping up at striker, you'll see a centre back at defensive midfield, just to kind of move the opposition around. And we know that's what Mamelodi Sundowns does. So if you guys, before you come for me and say that, no, but Rivaldo Kotsi is not a centre back, or Mudiba or whatever, Mudau is not a centre back, it's because when they defend, this is what they will look like. They will set up in a 4 and then a 3 and then a 3 to try and stop the opposition. But we know that their way of defending is really to press and try and win the ball high up, right? So if you've got the ball deep in your half trying to build up, or if they lose possession in your half, immediately what they do is they try and hunt it back in numbers. And later I'll talk about how we can possibly take advantage of that, and the players that they use, the players that they've got in their lineup, and how we can hurt them. And we know we can. We've done it to aplomb, to like a really good standard in the MTN8 last season. And I think we can take a leaf out of that book. We can really take a leaf out of that book of what we did there. And I think, putting that into what we have now, I think it's going to be much better. But before I get ahead of myself, so they will try and win the ball high. They'll try and press you in your half when you try and build up. and things like that, when you try and pass the ball around to try and break lines and progress the ball into the next phase of your attack, they'll try and win it back. They'll press you with numbers and win it back as quickly as possible, and then quickly pass it around, get into your goal and try and create chances like that. But I spoke about that they used, the total football principle, and maybe I want to use this as a segue to talk about the next thing, which is how do they build up. So obviously when the ball is with their goalkeeper or very deep in their own half, they will have a flat three where they'll spread the centre backs. Mutobi Mvala will be the one on the left, and then Ronan Williams will join and become centre of whoever they'll play on the right. They've played Grant Kekana over there. Sometimes they will play Kudisho Mudau, whom I think they will play tomorrow. I think they'll play Mudau on that right. And then Ronan Williams will then come in between them and join and help with that build-up. But will then, move forward. The left back will then join in and become somewhat of, the third line, because the second line will become Tebogo Mokoena and Rivaldo Coetzee, who are the double pivots that helps them progress the ball easily. So they'll have that three, and then they'll have a two, and then Batuel will somewhat be the next line of three, actually not two. A next line of three where they'll have someone like Mudiba in there sitting centrally, which is very interesting. It's an interesting tactic that they use. They'll have Mudiba in that next line, and then Batuel, the left back, will then join in as well and become that next line, and then you'll have Marcelo Allende, who's I beg your pardon, an 8, who'll then drift to that right side and offer somewhat of the width, and then you have the front three up front. Ribeiro will sometimes come deep, or Themba Zwane, who definitely will be playing tomorrow, will also sometimes come deep and join, or sometimes, Junior Mendieta is the one that plays on that side, or they'll have Lisibanku or Neo Maema. Those front three players will stay higher up, but one of them sometimes might drift in. Why do they drift in? To form that numerical advantage in that center of the pitch, but I'll get to that just now. So they'll obviously build up like that, to attract the opposition's press. They want you to come and press them. The reason why they want you to come and press them is because they know that, in Tebogo Mokoena and Rivaldo Coetzee, they've got really good ball players. They've got people that can play that pivot position, very good, and very aware of what's happening around them, especially because they've got this system that knows what it does. They've got people like Allende who knows where to be, when, at what point. As soon as you try and press them, they'll get the ball to the goalkeeper, who, by the way, Ronan Williams, quite opposite to Sipho Shaina, is fantastic at his passing. He knows how to penetrate, those lines of the opposition with a simple pass, and he'll find someone like Rivaldo Coetzee, who then pivot and go to that side. Pivot is almost like to swing. This word pivot is swing, really, in English, but so someone like Rivaldo Coetzee will then pivot their possession and then go to Marcelo Allende, and just like that, they've broken your line. They've got you where they want you. You've got spaces in between your lines, and then they start attacking you. And then to the next thing that I want to talk about, what do they do in attack? They will then flood out that central space. They will have a lot of numbers in that space. They'll have Mokoena in there. They'll have Allende in there, and then they'll have someone like Zwane coming in. They'll have Mudiba as well, and then they'll bring their striker in there, and they'll have this numerical advantage and suffocate you in the midfield and try and pass the ball around, rotate it in the midfield, try and break down your next block, your next line, like that. They'll move, and then they'll stick obviously one man out wide, which is usually Lisibanku on the right. When they've got Thapelo Maseko, he's the one that will offer that width on the left side. And people will be moving around, and they do that very well, very well. They've got good combinations on the left, where Mudiba, who's naturally a left back will then occupy that left side when Batuel somewhat comes in and becomes a 6, and sometimes Junior Mendieta comes in and he becomes an 8 or a 10, and Mudiba is the one that goes out wide, or they'll do it the other way around. Mendieta will go out wide, Mudiba will come inside, and they've got a lot of triangles going on and around in that left side. They also do have triangles on this right side where Allende sometimes in build-up will go out wide and become something of like what you would expect the right back to be at when you try and build up. Allende will be the one to pick up the ball in that space there on the right. If not he pop up there, then Kutsia will drop in and become the deepest player alongside Mvala. And then Allende will come in field and come deep alongside Tebogo Mokoena, and then Mudau, who's naturally a right back, will be the one that goes out. So they've got a lot of movement and a lot of rotations in possession to try and move the ball and progress it and attack you. And they'll do that as well up front. Themba Zwane will sometimes drift to the left. They'll sometimes come inside. Ribeiro will sometimes go all the way to the right or come in field or go to the left. And it's just a wonderful system, and they've got a really wonderful machine that they've built over years, and the technical team has identified the right players to fit into what they're trying to do. Think about people that they've sold recently, Keisha Smailula, and they've brought in fantastic players in the likes of Ribeiro and Junior Mendieta and Batusi Albas, who sometimes comes into that midfield as well. So that's what they'll do to you in possession. But quickly, before I stay here for too long and speak about it for too long, how can we take advantage of them? How can we beat them? And I'll put an image right now, which I think is going to summarize really how I think we can take advantage of them. So obviously what they will do, because of the whole rotation of possession and the interchange in possessions and how aggressive they are when they attack you in terms of their numbers, there's a lot of spaces for teams to take advantage of. I think if you want to beat Mamelodi Sundowns, and obviously this is not an exhaustive video with the complete breakdown of how to beat them, because if I could do that, then I'd probably be working in the technical team of Orlando Pirates. However, I do think that the obvious thing for everyone to see is that if you want to beat Mamelodi Sundowns, I saw it versus Richards Bay, I saw it in moments against Polokwane City, obviously Kaizer Chiefs as well, is that you want to beat them on offensive transitions. You want to make sure if you win the ball in your half, whatever, when they're still disorganized, when everyone is still all over the place and they're trying to attack you, then with speed and precision, you want to go and attack them. And I think this is going to be the theme of this football match. I think we're not going to get as many chances that we are used to getting. But when we do get those chances, I think we've really got to be precise and clinical in what we do. And I think that's what we'll be working on, these 2 days after our game versus Reneng is, can we be really clinical in our counter-attacks? Can we really be precise in finding the right people knowing where to be at what time? When we get the ball, who are the runners? And I just want to reference something from the previous game, because I think it's really going to come in handy. If you think about that match that we dismantled Mamelodi Sundowns 3-0 last season in the MTN 8 semi-final in that second leg, is I think people that were really a massive weapon for us was Akele Lepasa and Munapule Saleng. And I think, coming into this season, we've got those two same players, playing for us, really good at stretching defenses. And I think that's what's going to be our weapon, is we're going to have to stretch them. And there's a lot of weaknesses in their back line, especially on the flanks. When they start building up, Mvala has to sometimes be the one that covers that left side, where if you've got a really pacey guy, he doesn't really want to go to that space. Central defenders want to stay central. But if you're going to, put Saleng obviously out there and find him really quickly, then you're forcing Mvala to make decisions to come out wide and start chasing Saleng. And we know what happens in that kind of situation. We saw it last season, and we've seen it in games this season as well. On the left side as well, Mudau, if he ever pushes forward, then you're going to have to then isolate Rivaldo Kotsia with someone like Lebohile Mofokeng on the left. The other thing that I do think that is going to be of really great use for us and we can use as a weapon against them is that they've not got a defensive midfielder. So their defensive midfielder is the system that they use. Where other teams will buy, someone like Sibongiseni Mthetho to be the one that sort of wins the ball back in that midfield, they rely on their system. And, the thing about, pressing high and trying to win the ball back aggressively is that if you don't do it with, a good kind of organization and everyone is in sync with what everyone else is doing, is that if it's in disarray, then you're easy to break down. And I think we'll really need to take advantage of that when they try and win the ball against us. We're going to, again, need that precision in our passing to bypass that line of pressure and then, have these situations, these 4v3s, these 3v3s, 2v3s, where it's our attack versus their backline running at them. I really do think that that's going to be the trajectory of the game. It's going to be them trying to break us down, obviously with possession, us winning the ball back and then hurting them. I think that Orlando Pirates is the most dangerous club on offensive transitions in this league. I really think, Kaizer Chiefs have obviously got the pace of Dupree, but in terms of precision and things like that, with everyone kind of, ticking and everyone in sync with one another, I think they're not using their speed like they could. I think Mamelodi Sundowns, Stellenbosch, teams like that are teams that are really dangerous on offensive transitions. And I think Mamelodi Sundowns know that and they will find that out tomorrow. As much as they'll know all of this and try and plan for it, but it's hard to keep, a good team out for 90 minutes. We'll find out that it's going to be hard to keep them out for 90 minutes tomorrow. But I think they will as well find out that we're going to be very hard, extremely hard to keep out for 90 minutes. One thing that is obviously a worry for us is that we'll be missing someone like Ndlondlo in that midfield. I don't know whether this for me is a disadvantage or an advantage in that, I speak about that they will want to hunt the ball down in midfield and they'll do it aggressively. They'll want to win it back as soon as they lose it in that midfield. So if you've got someone who sometimes Ndlondlo, which is my biggest critique of him, is that he sometimes dwells on it for too long. But this season has been fantastic in that regard. He's been releasing it. He's been making those good passes. He's been, being that pivot for us who progresses the ball from deep areas to our next lines, our attackers. So I do predict that the coach will start Miguel Tim in Ndlondlo's absence because he got suspended for the number of yellow cards that he's accumulated in the course of these 8 games that we've played so far. I do think that Miguel Tim will be the one that comes in there. I don't know whether that's a disadvantage because then I'm thinking about, the adventurous passing to be able to find people like Saleng. The great thing about Tim is that he's got a good pass on him. I guess the weakness of Tim is that he's not that agile. He's more of, he's very safe in his approach in that midfield. He's not someone who'll be looking to turn and finding his teammates up front. But when he does, he's got a really good pass on him. Maybe the advantage is that then we might not see a lot of turnovers and possession in that midfield, which is important because we don't want to be giving them the ball in midfield, having them win it against our midfield and then attacking us. So I guess the advantage is that with having Tim in midfield, but the disadvantage then becomes that who's the one that's going to have to find, our wingers, our forwards. A lot of the time I've seen in previous seasons is that that's the job that's left to CBC. You'll see our centre backs being the ones that try and spray those passes and try and find, the wide players and the forwards. Where, to be honest, I think CBC is a decent defender. I think he's a very good defender in actual fact, but he's a decent ball player, not as good as someone like Nda. So obviously in the absence of someone like Nda, who's very precise in his passing with both feet, you know that if you're pressed in midfield, you can easily give it to the centre backs and he'll find those forward players in a route one kind of pass. Again, the goalkeeper is another one who's not that good in his passing. So you do lose someone who's going to be adventurous in Ndlondlo in that midfield in finding our forward players in those good positions. But I don't know which to go with. Is it a disadvantage or an advantage? There's advantages and disadvantages on both sides. But I do think that, the fact that we might not lose so much of the ball in midfield is going to be so key for us. And that's why I'm not so beat down by the fact that Ndlondlo will be missing tomorrow in this game. Yeah, maybe let me leave it here. Obviously, the narrative around this game is that it's a must-win for us. We've got to win this game, to keep up this title challenge that we all think that we are going to mount this season. We'd have to win this one. If they win this one, then they go 14 points ahead of us with 2 games in hand, meaning that if we win our 2 games, then it's a points gap of 8 points, which is something that you really don't want. Something I've spoken about on this platform is that when you're chasing Mamelodi Sundowns to win the title against them, is you don't want to chase them because they're really good and in those leading positions. When they've got that momentum of leading you, they really drop points. What's something that we've really got to get Mamelodi Sundowns to this season as Orlando Pirates is to, go toe to toe with them. Let there be no gap and then chase the challenge. Chase the title like that. Let's attack the title where there's no gap between them and between us and them, and see how they deal with that pressure of having to win games in the DStv Premiership, having to win games in the Cup, having to win games in Africa. Then they will then crumble at some point, having to sacrifice this or that and things like that, knowing that if we miss out in the league, then definitely in the cups we'll take advantage there. So let me leave it here. Gonna be a fascinating game. I don't want to go on for too long. I'll be here again, doing a review after that game. I hope that it's going to be a very positive one. It's going to be a positive result. I'm very optimistic, quietly optimistic, because I do think that we've got a machine. In those central positions, people like Maswanganyi are going to be, without a defensive midfield who's focusing his attention on him and trying to mark. If they, use someone like Tebogo Mokoena to do that, then you've got spaces all around then for people like Mufokeng and Saleng to operate. So I think it's a spectacle that's set up for a tactical battle, but also for individual players to shine tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it. I'll be here after the game. Up the Mighty Bucks. Cheers. I know you're craving some more of Talking Buccaneers content. Well, I have great news for you. If you hit that subscribe button right now, you'll stay up to date with all our future content.